and welcome to Visibility and Visibility Unlimited, the Spotlight, the video portion to Visibility Unlimited, the podcast. I'm Leslie Short, your host and the owner of the Cavu Group. Loving our topic today, I am with a friend and colleague, Kymberlee Norsworthy, who has over 2 decades of public relations, firsthand experience from the music, film, corporate, non-for-profit. She is a professor, and that intrigued me to speak about the next generation of PR and publicists and everything else that's going on in the media world. Welcome, Kymberlee.
Thank you, Leslie. It's so great to be with you. It's always wonderful. Like you said, we've known each other for a long time, or maybe you didn't say that. You talked about my 2 decades in PR, but we've known each other that long. That's how we met. So it's always great to talk to you, and I'm happy to be with you on this podcast.
Oh, thank you. And what some people don't know is that I used to do PR back in the day. One of the reasons that we knew each other.
Yep.
And PR is one of those things, public relations, for those that may not know what PR is. Everyone thinks it's magical. PR is not magical. In today's society where we are, is it ethical? Is it unbiased? Let's just talk about how are you working with the next generation?
Right. And I just love when you say PR is not magical. And of course you said, is it magical or is it ethical? But when you're saying PR is not magical, I couldn't help but think about a time when I was working at a record label, and artists, they can sometimes think you just snap your fingers and they're on the cover of Time magazine, they're on the cover of New York magazine. And I was known for always saying PR is not magic. Like that would be my first thing that I would say, especially if it was a new artist and they meet A&R, they meet marketing, they meet everybody. When they meet me, like before they got to me, they were told, she's gonna tell you PR is not
right.
PR is not magic.
You look at what's happening now, right? You have, and all of a sudden PR is back in the news, whether it's the news story, which we get into a little later, with 2 actors going at each other, but then the 2 actors, the publicists, went after each other, the agencies are going after each other. Now that's changing the way you have a new press secretary, the way that they're working. So what do you tell your students when it comes to ethics and public relations? Because we're in such a sensational moment.
Yeah, we're in a very sensational moment, sensationalistic. And I'm teaching, after we had the runaway hit on television scandal. So a lot of students are interested in PR. And when I talk to them on the first day of class, and, what do you think about when you think about PR? Many of them think about Olivia Pope. They think about Crisis and they think about Olivia Pope, and a PR person is someone that makes things go away, right? When something controversial happens for a client, they think about Crisis, and then they think about entertainment publicists, right? Which they also can have kind of a bird's eye view of what that career is like as well, from social media, and things like that. So one of the things I really like when I have the opportunity to talk about ethics, I have a lead up to it, right? So I do let them, I let them give me what their entry point is as far as what they know about PR. I talk about the history of PR, and I share not only historical figures like Ed Bernays and Richard Edelman, but I talk about Paul Block, right? So we're talking about Hollywood PR and what's happening now with those 2 actors. Paul Block is somebody who was known in Hollywood as the consummate professional, and he worked with high-profile personalities who often were in crisis situations. And what he was known for was telling the truth without making his clients look bad, right? And it wasn't there. So I introduced my students to people like Paul Block, to people like Judy Smith, who Olivia Pope's character was modeled after, right? And so that they can see, there's layers to this.
Right. And
Right, like
that's the
that's what I
thing.
want to show them. There's layers to this, right?
Yes.
Like y'all got some extremes as far as your entry
Hmm.
points, but there are layers. And then about the fourth week or the third week in, I start, introducing them to PR ethics and the underscore of what we're talking about. When I'm sharing that with them, getting outside of the academic aspect and like
Right.
theories of ethics, and of course I introduced them to the PRSA code of ethics for the field. But the underscore is when you're in, public relations, you really want to think about the reputation and the credibility that you want to build for yourself as a professional, and not just think, oh, I have a job to do. So I talk to them about working at an agency, and perhaps you're asked to plant stories about negatively about anything or anyone.
Right.
Your personal moral and ethical compass needs to rise up to determine if that's something that you're going to do or not, based on the reputation that you want to have in the field. You're building a career, is what I'm telling
Right.
them, not just doing a job. So it's not always about, oh, my boss asked me to send out that press release where I knew the information was incorrect, or to plant these stories and I knew, that they were false, but I had a job to do. No, you have a reputation to build.
Right. And you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility not only to yourself, but to the client and to those that the snowballs. There's a snowball effect, and the excuse of, oh, my boss said doesn't work. Now there are, and let's just be honest, there are jobs that you can get, are sensationalist PR jobs. That is what you
Absolutely.
do, and you have chosen to go do that. I'm not knocking anyone
Absolutely.
for it. That is a very different ethical line and a very different bias line
Yep.
that only you can answer,
Yep.
you know?
And the
And
people who do, I know plenty of people who, that's part of what they do regularly.
Mhm.
And it's their kind of personal. When you're talking about ethics, that barometer is very personal. And that's the kind of PR, and that's not all that they do, but they are definitely comfortable with having, those types of tactics in the
Right.
arsenal.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you have to have different things in your arsenal. You have to
Yep.
know how to bob and weave. And let's just speak. There is corporate PR that is maybe giving facts and figures, and that's what it is, and a quote from the CEO or a quote from someone from the board, and that's the press release. We're launching A, it does B, it costs C. Here's a quote, and that's it. That's one. Then there is a lot of what we did with celebrities and things. You're taking their story and creating it so that it is worthy of when you read it. You're not embellishing it, you're putting it together so that it's storytelling,
Yep.
you know? And whenever a client would want to be extra, I'd be like, don't forget, I wrote your press release. Don't make me
Right.
out to be a liar now.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And
Right.
so there's so many different ways. And I remember being on the red carpet one night and someone said, "Oh, I didn't know what you were doing." Because at one point, there's also the image of what a PR girl is. And I'm going to use that phrase that I do not like, but that's what they would call the PR girls. Oh,
Yeah.
they're getting me over there running around,
Yeah.
as opposed to a PR executive at one point. And so that difference, do you get into that with your class, or just even speak about that when, and you are still working, you are someone that still has clients and
Yeah. 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 We talk about different things like beauty bias, for instance, where there is this bias in PR towards, people who are perceived as extremely attractive, whether you're a male or female or LGBTQ plus transgender, whatever. There's this beauty bias of you need to have a certain look, to do this work.
right.
And that's something that when you don't fit into that box, you're constantly working to prove yourself,
Mhm.
basically, and to gain trust and credibility because of that particular bias.
Or
So
you're not allowed out the office. You don't do the events. You will sin, but you don't go.
Let me tell you, I had at an agency, my boss basically at the time, it was that exact thing. So I was actually the only African American at my agency, male, female, or otherwise. So had me go to an event once because they needed all hands on deck. And but my boss told me not to talk to the client, don't talk to the client. We just need you to do X, Y, and Z. And that was something that I still remember. That was one of my first jobs, and I still remember it to this day. And it really is representative of what you just said. Sometimes that bias shows up as you don't go to the events, like you can do the work, but don't be visible, or you can be visible, but you can't be
Don't
vocal,
speak.
like don't speak.
Right. And it is crazy. It is an industry of looks and connection. And there are let me say, there's so many ways you can do PR, whether you're doing a magazine, whether it's entertainment, whether it's for the arts. But at the end of the day, the work is still supposed to be about, and this has changed, so I'm going to say this and then we can talk about it, building a story with an outlet that highlights your client and or product, whatever that people, place, or thing that you are promoting, that has some teeth to it. Just
Yeah,
because you have a new shirt out or a new tire doesn't mean it's press worthy. I remember back in the days of building stories, working with reporters, working with outlets, and you built a story, and 6 months later they came and they covered you for 2 or 3 days. Now, I remember when I said I don't want to do this anymore, when they start asking who's sleeping with who,
right.
who, who are they going to show up on the red carpet?
Everything wanting all the gossip.
Yes, it became such a personal, interpersonal uh, way to report. It wasn't about
Yeah,
what they were doing; it was who they were doing it with.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I miss those days of really being able to cultivate stories. That is still a part of PR, because we do still have legacy media. So what
Right,
happens now, clients have to be very aware of what they're doing on social media, that they don't want coming into, being a part of perhaps a feature story that your PR person is working on, that takes 3 or 4 months in many instances to cultivate and get that yes from Vogue magazine, or from Vanity Fair, any of these publications, legacy publications. The New York Times magazine still does beautiful features. They don't
right,
happen, like we said at the beginning, it's not magic. They don't happen overnight. So it's months of just pitching, in many
right,
instances, and cultivating and getting to the yes. And then there's still usually another couple of months of actually producing the story. So what's different now is all of our clients are on social media. And we don't have the opportunity. Before social media, we had the opportunity to say, no, that didn't happen.
right.
Somebody's telling us what they heard, and we can say, no,
You
that
missed a
never
post
happened.
nowadays, right? But if you missed a post now, you could be like, "Oh my God, that did happen." Yeah,
And so, that's what the long game, as people like to
mhm,
say in business, it applies to public relations and storytelling, and preserving your brand heritage by thinking about what you're doing right now and what you're getting ready to post, and how that's going to potentially affect you this time next year.
right,
When you do have something that's launching, and your publicist is pitching stories. And what do journalists do? They do research, and where do they start? They start with your social media. So with my students, we talk a lot, because the students don't really understand legacy media. They only know social.
social
So
media.
yes,
Yes.
I'm able to build that bridge when we're
Mhm.
talking about PR, how social media is a part of it, but we still are talking to journalists, talking to television producers, and cultivating stories that happen in, legacy, that will be placed in legacy media,
Mm.
and one should feed the other.
Absolutely. And it
Definitely
does
not
take
opposed.
time. And it's
And it
not how
takes
many
time.
followers you have. Like that's the difference. And for some, it is that, be, which is sad because well, we didn't have social media back then. So
Right,
it really was the word of the moment, the merit of which your product or person
right.
um, what they were doing or what it did, that product. And now there is that combination of everything that
Yep,
you do have to understand that you may have be on the verge of a great story and they see something on social media and the press picks up on it quick and you've lost it.
yeah.
You've lost.
And you've lost it. And that's, it's something else that I share a lot about how social media has even affected the public relations practice,
Mhm.
because journalists and media outlets, they are around the clock, right? And so there's more of a trend now of picking up stories, like you said, because it took off on social media, something went viral on social media.
Right.
Now that becomes packaged as a news story,
Good or
and
bad.
so good or bad, because it happened again. Like
Right.
there's no gatekeeper to say no, that didn't happen. Like it happened and it went viral,
Right.
and people are talking about it. And so now the news media, they make that a part of their reporting strategy, when they're filing, especially in any newsroom, they're filing multiple stories a day, and people who cover, celebrities or fashion or sports, they were only getting information from publicists. Like we had the gold. Like
We were
they
the
had to have
gatekeepers.
relationships.
We were the
Yeah, they had
gatekeepers.
to have relationships with
Yes.
us, but their information source is now, social. And so it makes the PR person have to be more strategic
Mhm.
oftentimes with how are you going to work with your client to cultivate bigger stories. And sometimes maybe it's something that grows organically out of what they're doing on social media, or maybe you work together to say, okay, this is where we're taking your brand, so
Mhm.
start posting this type of information on
Right.
social, so that I
Because you
have
build a
more
thought leader.
pitching. Exactly.
Right. You build a
Exactly.
thought leader differently now than what you did back in the day.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Uh-huh.
yes,
And the thing about the press can go directly to the person now. Not that they couldn't before, but there was that gatekeeper they knew they would need to go through. Now they can DM someone and go
yeah,
through. And then sometimes people are so excited about that that they speak and then they expect us to be Olivia Pope and come back and like pull the story or pull it down
yeah,
or can't you just take it down?
yeah.
And then
And
they
you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. No. And
not at
no, I
all.
can't. Not at all. And that's where the client relationships come into play. And especially, you and I have worked so much in entertainment. So with personalities, right? And newer, perhaps artists, and getting them accustomed to having a protocol. And so if someone does DM you and everything, you should direct them to your PR person. Like
Right.
direct them to
Immediately.
if I'm saying, like, direct them to me, or you can just screenshot it and send that to me and I'll get in contact with them. Don't talk directly to the media. I tell people that I work with, it's never going to work in your favor.
Right.
It's never going to work in your favor.
No
And
comment is
that's
the
no
comment.
disrespect. Exactly. And it's no disrespect. Like, I have relationships in the media. It's
Mhm.
no disrespect to anybody, but it's never going to work in your favor. That means that you don't have my expertise in, number one, asking follow-up questions so that I can really figure out what are we trying to do
What are they
here?
thinking
What's the
about?
story?
Right.
Exactly. And really crafting the right responses.
Mhm.
And that's what we do. And it's not spin, but it is protecting the brand that we work with. And me telling you what you need to know that meets your need for the storytelling that you're going to do, and also continues to uphold the brand integrity of who I work with. And if you're the artist and they DM'd you directly, or you're the personality and they DM'd you directly, you're not going to do that. You're just going to answer the questions.
Right.
And
And because you're
that's,
not thinking about it, which
yeah,
fine, you're the artist, right?
yeah,
But there is strategy to PR. If PR is done correctly, it is not a chess game, is not tricking someone, is not planning a story, but there is, and I loved how you said that, brand integrity.
yeah,
And so how do you keep that and making sure that you're giving new information, sharing information, but that the other person is also receiving what you're giving? I was in the middle of a huge story that I had worked on with a large news organization. I will not say the name right now. And they came into the office. The clients came in to sit down. They asked the first question very lovely. And a lot of times you don't get the questions in advance, but you have the scope for which you will stay within. And then she flipped and she started, you're this and you're that. I heard this and I heard that. And I just looked at my clients. And luckily, I had that relationship with my clients, something we have to build. And I
yep,
said, I just looked at them. I didn't even tell them not to answer. And I looked at her. I said, I'm sorry, where are you going? This is so far from the perimeters of what this discussion is. I don't even know what this is.
yeah,
She said, I'll do what I want to do. And I looked at my clients and said, you can leave the room now. This
yep,
conversation is now between us, not
mhm,
between you all.
yep,
And
yep,
that's what, if people want to call it gatekeeping, but that is protecting. I am gatekeeping your brand.
yep, absolutely.
And there's integrity in that. And there's understanding how to build, that PR is supposed to be building, not tearing
Yep.
down.
Exactly. Exactly. And understanding the importance, you mentioned the word, strategic, even being strategic in how we're dealing with the media, who's getting an interview at what stage of a campaign development. Every media, especially large organizations, like you mentioned, you have a few people that you can even choose from who would be the best to interview your client, right?
Right.
Making those types of choices, those strategic decisions, so that the story is what we all collectively need it to be for it to, uphold the brand, as opposed to it only serving the needs and the desires of the media outlet, right? Which
Right.
we know sometimes if something can be a little controversial, if they can get some tea, right? Like that's going to make their viewership and their readership and their listenership higher. So we're very sensitive to that, and nobody is required to speak to the media. So it's like, okay, if we're
Repeat
going to
that.
do a story, that needs to
One
work
more
for
time
us
on
too.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It needs to work for it needs to work for me and mine, not just for you and the goals that you have. And that's where, like you mentioned, the relationships where you should be able to, talk to whoever is doing the interview or the producers, talk to them in advance and co-create, so to speak,
Right.
that particular story. And we're not, it's not writing out the questions first, or some things that we see
Mhm.
happen that become stories, in and of themselves, but
Right.
working with the journalists so that it's a win-win type of situation. And at this stage, for me, so many people I've worked with over the decades, and it happens all the time, and they will they'll say, hey, this is what we plan on asking. Y'all cool with this? And I
Right.
appreciate that so much. They don't have to, but it's just out of respect. And
It's respect.
sometimes, we started out talking about the ethics, of PR practitioners. So people also know, like I'm
How
not,
you work.
yeah, I'm not the volume, just all press, like bring it on. So it really does have to work for whoever I'm representing. It has to be win-win. And I think, that's part of my reputation, like that I'm
Right.
very protective of, the clients that I work with, and I want good stories, and I'm not afraid of saying no, to a journalist if I don't think it's going to be worth my clients or in my client's best interest rather. So I get that opportunity a lot, and and I don't take it for granted. So that's
Right.
what we want to do, like always. And I think for younger people, because we're talking about students, and if they don't, they need to hear that type of reality, because otherwise it's real easy. When I first started, I just wanted all the press. Like that came with
Because you want to show what
wisdom.
you can do.
I wanted to show what
Yeah.
I could do. Right. And then you learn that it's really the strategy,
Mhm.
and how you do what you do that makes the difference, because then you're
Yes.
getting the press and it's monumental, for your clients, and it doesn't backfire on them in certain ways, and things like that. So we have to be very strategic, and not be afraid to
Yes.
co-create these stories with journalists.
And that even goes for red carpet. Like some people are like, I just want the red carpet full. And I'm like, but full with what? Where are the stories going? How are they actually going to promote? What's it going to do? Know who's on the red carpet. And is it a red carpet where people are going down and speaking? It's the integrity of the publicists that invited them and the celebrities or whoever is showing up as well. And so there's that. Uh, People want to know who's on your press list.
Yep.
It's why am I bringing my client and tip tap toe or is the only one, and not saying that and I absolutely believe, and especially nowadays, that there should be a section for bloggers and podcasters. There's an importance. Media has changed, but there's also an integrity that goes along with what they're bringing. And
Yeah.
so understanding how that media has changed. I want to shift gears for one moment. And it was something I learned in media when I started from day one. If you were on the red carpet, is different than being in the red carpet. And I was like, what? She's like, you're on the red carpet because you're moving your clients. If you're in the red carpet, then people are taking pictures of you. And then you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing your job.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, we both know that there are, and it's in the news now where all of a sudden two publicists have become, it went from the celebrities fighting to the publicists fighting to now they're the story. Their colleagues are writing the stories about them. And,
Right.
and so you also have to know how to represent your clients or product, be there, but not be the story, be the
Yeah.
conduit to the story.
Yep. Yep. That's so beautifully put. And it's really funny because that um perception, I guess I can call it, about publicists being um in the red carpet came up just today. Just today. And I said to my students, the art of doing it
Mhm.
is you're not in the pictures. Like,
Right.
how to position yourself so that
Mhm.
the cameraman is only
Mhm.
facing your client. When there's photos, you know how to step back so that the photographers are only getting your client. That's not something like that was the thinking that, oh,
Right.
the publicists are always like right there, like, and they're in the pictures and they're in the shots. And as I said, it's actually just the opposite when it's done correctly. And sometimes it does happen,
Yeah.
like you'll see the publicist whisking somebody in, or
Right.
what have you. But yeah, that
Yeah. I remember
there's an
working an
art, and
event.
that's why I told them there's an art to staying out the way. And like the cool
Exactly.
kids today, they like to say, I just like to stay out the way. That's what they need to adopt as, PR practitioners. Stay out the way.
Stay out the way. Know when to slide in, know when to slide out. I was working this event and all the celebrities and ball players that were coming in were all hugging and kissing me. And all of a sudden the press line said, well, should we know who you are? Because this is not a normal, like, oh, publicist. I'm like, nah, no, no, no,
Right.
no. And I just kept going. And someone that did know me, they're like, oh, she a big boss over somewhere else. But there was a mutual respect. You
Yeah.
go out in LA and the press needs certain lights and they need water and they need this. And I remember they were fighting one night and I said, this is what we're not going to do. And
Right.
someone's like, well, so you can't speak to them like that. I said, absolutely I can. Because if
Right.
we're going to work together tonight, there has to be a respect because I know what they need. I'm going to make sure they get the shots they need, but they are not going to stand there and fight and scream with each other. That's just unacceptable to me.
Right.
And so
Right.
I set the tone for the way that I wanted that red carpet to work. Most people don't actually have that option, let's be honest, unless it's your
Right.
company
Right.
and you have that type of relationship with them. And so at the end of the day, PR is really about relationships, your your ethics, understanding your bias, yours and your clients, because I've
Yep.
seen publicists snatch away clients trying to say hello to someone else because they didn't deem them worthy or
Yeah.
or didn't want them to get the shot with that person.
Yeah, and just and also, that bias comes up so much, and it's an age old problem with red carpets. We're talking about red carpets and diverse press. Where's the black press? Like, why are they situated like all the way at the end when most of the artists have to be whisked in, at that point? And publicists, even if you have a black outlet, you have BET, and your publicist is, and maybe they're at the top, but the publicist sees BET, and as you, in your words, they deem it unworthy and they just walk past. That's a big problem, in PR. And it's one that we're constantly, and the media, community, black journalists and everything are constantly fighting against. But that bias of it's only the certain elite, top tier media outlets that's worth our time to talk to, when you're literally on a red carpet, to talk to media,
Just speak to
like
people.
everybody that's there. Like,
Right.
if you're, and we know, if you're the star, it's a film premiere. If you're the A-list star, we know they don't talk to everybody. They
Right.
may have predetermined they're only going to talk to Entertainment
Two or
Tonight, or
three
they're
people.
to
Right.
talk to Associated Press or what have you. But most of us who are bringing clients to a red carpet event, it's because that's our moment to be about, let's get some press.
Right.
Let's get some press. So why are you walking past people? Like, why are you walking past any outlet when
And
that's what
just
you're there to do?
and just so people know, to get to the red carpet, the conversation's already needed to start about having your client invited. And then where they were sitting on the inside, like it's not just they showing up. So you've already done all this work
Yeah,
before you even came to the red carpet. Now
yeah,
you have them on the red carpet. It is the best if you can to have them speak. That was kind of at one point my claim to fame when I was doing, like, how do you have these designers on the red carpet and they're doing more interviews than the doggone stars? Because I
yeah.
worked the press in the beginning, way before the premieres, and I built relationships with them as well as the publicists for the movie or this, that, and the other.
Right,
There's
right,
more than one person
right.
that you have to build relationships with.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to be comfortable having all those different conversations, with people. And as you said, building the relationship, making sure that you already know them, making sure that they know you, and that you can get buy-in for what you're trying to accomplish in that moment, that you can get their support, for what you're trying to accomplish. So you can't be, I'm someone, my natural personality, I'm not I'm more so on the shy side. Like, I was a more of a shy kid than an outgoing kid, for instance. But I was very active and everything. And so in PR, I've had to kind of tap into what I tapped into when I was younger, where it was like, okay, like, I'm kind of shy, but I want to run for student body president. So I got to start I got to
You're gonna
start
have to
talking
speak.
to people, and getting to know my classmates and getting them to know
Right.
me. Kind of really being able to activate the parts of your personality, because people think, like, the misnomer is you have to be a social butterfly. You don't have to be a social butterfly. You need to know, though, the rules of engagement, and figure out how you can condition yourself and maximize the aspects of your personality that fit right into those rules, and
Mhm.
then nurture the other sides of your personality,
Right.
so that it's the red carpet moment. Okay, we know we want our client there. Before that, who do we need to make sure knows us, so that when we get there, I can just say, oh, I'm Kymberlee, I talked to you before, I said I was bringing X, Y, and Z, we're here, are you ready to talk now? Right.
Right.
You have to be
Absolutely.
comfortable doing that.
Yeah. So I think it's great. I mean, looking forward to the next group of everyone is not a publicist. So there's ways to work PR where you're not a publicist. Let's just
Yeah.
maybe you can break that down with.
Yeah, and so this is what is the other thing that I get so much joy out of sharing with the students and teaching the students. So yes, you can be a publicist, entertainment, sports, fashion, some of those types of very intriguing fields. You can be a corporate communications specialist. So if you're interested, you still want some media relations, elements to what you do and pitching stories and everything, but for on behalf of a company, right? And when you do that, it's a lot more structured because the media that covers the healthcare industry, that covers the finance industry, that covers Fortune 500 companies, it's a very set list. So it's not just a, all this vast
Hoping that
world.
you're not hoping there's 15 events happening at
Right,
night. People
right,
magazine has to decide
right.
on which two they're going to cover. Like,
Exactly. It's much more structured. I have a friend who uh comes from the insurance, communications in the insurance, PR and communications in the insurance industry. And we were talking, one time, and she was like, it takes us like 6 months to get a press release approved. And
yeah,
she was like, I could never do what you do. Like y'all like entertainment, like y'all do stuff every day. It takes us 6 months to do one thing, and that works for me. She's like, and that works for me.
yes,
She's
yeah,
like, I wouldn't eat. I would. It was like you eat what you kill. She's like, I wouldn't eat if I had to have a kill every day or every week. So, but the point is, that's a whole. It's you're still doing PR and communications, and you can
right,
do it at a pace that's suitable for you. There's also right now we're in this era of content creation and storytelling, right? So it's that we were always doing that, but it's kind of a focal point at companies. And so perhaps you're interested, a lot of nonprofits, for instance, they have communications roles. All they're doing is writing about the amazing work that the nonprofit does. And it's going on the nonprofit's website, it's going into the newsletter that goes out to their
right,
constituents and stakeholders, and whatever select media that covers that area. You'll send things out to them, but you're doing a lot of writing, a lot of storytelling, a lot of content creation, and you're still in the PR discipline, and
right,
you're not you don't have a heavy media relations focus. So there's so many ways that you can do PR because every industry has PR. Every industry has a need to figure out how do we protect our brand image and how do we tell our story in a
right.
way that keeps us in business or keeps us afloat, whatever it is we're doing. And we're the specialists at that, but it looks different in varied industries. There's
And
also,
it sounds different. It
and it
sounds
sounds different.
The
And there's
writing is
also,
different.
exactly. And I was just going to say one thing that students get very intrigued about, two things actually. One is public information officers,
Mhm.
which major government entities, for instance, a lot of them have PIOs where it's just that you're doing a lot of writing and you're kind of an internal journalist that connects whatever is happening
Right.
at the organization to the public in a need to know fashion. Most of our police departments have public
Yes.
information officers, right? So that's another thing that students get really excited to know that they're not familiar with, and internal communication. So doing employee communications internally at an organization where again, you're writing your brand reputation for your company, but your focal point, your audience is employees. Like, what do they need to know about changes in our health insurance,
Right.
our health coverage, or anything. So
Anything.
that's
Yeah.
just it's vast, and introducing the students to the vastness of PR, even though I come from it, doing it in certain areas, that I get a lot of joy out of because they come in with like these kind of narrow visions of it, and they
Right.
see, no matter what their interests are, no matter kind of, their personality and the kind of work life they envision themselves having, they can see themselves in PR
Where
through what I'm able to share with them.
I love that. Just on a note, the crisis PR, it is real. The Olivia Popes are real, but that's also to be a really good crisis publicist, you have to be able to, that's where your relationships with attorneys and how you move with internal and the PR person that's there. Like when I build a team, I'm coming in as overall the crisis person, but because I have a background in PR and marketing and advertising and will deal with lawyers, I can actually build with maybe that publicist that's there all the time a new way of having this conversation and who they have relationships with, as well as may not be the right person for what we need at this moment. So it's really, it is full circle on what this industry can be. At the end of the day, regardless of where you go, it's not magical, even if it takes 6 months.
PR is not magic.
It should be ethical. And you do need to be aware of your bias and others as you are pitching, building, and storytelling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that last part, I think more than ever in the times that we find ourselves in now, being very mindful and introspective, I guess I would say, about your ideals and your biases about people who work in PR, or about what media you're thinking is more valuable than other media, and arresting that, because doing that, it's like a very internal process with bias management. We all have them, but
Right.
care enough to know what yours are, and bring them under control. Don't let them guide your decision making, and be a part of us widening the lanes in PR, the lanes of access for people who want to work in PR, and also for media, who wants to cover a variety of stories and don't need gatekeepers who are saying, oh, because you're the African American media or you're the Hispanic media, you're not going to talk to my client. So that's important work that needs to be done, and that I think this next generation of public relations executives, that they're definitely up for. They're up for changing the tide.
On that note, Kymberlee, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you?
It is best probably to find me on LinkedIn. Kymberlee, Kymberlee Norsworthy, Norsworthy. At LinkedIn. I am on Instagram, for instance, but I'm most present on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Wonderful. It's always great to speak with you. This was an amazing
Yes.
conversation.
Yes, this was wonderful, and congratulations on doing your podcast. I know this isn't your first one by any means, but podcasts are a lot of work. That podcasts are not magic. So congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone that's watching. Thank you for everyone that's listening. Visibility Unlimited, Visibility Unlimited Spotlight, the video portion of the podcast. As always, I'm Leslie Short, your host, and I look forward to seeing you and speaking to you again soon. Bye now.